Hi friends, my name is Jane, professional coach for Envy Gaming. And in today's video in the Pillars of Pro series, I'm joined by Mac, Director of Mental Skills at Envy Gaming, because today we're talking about the professional mindset. So Mac, today we're going to be talking about the professional mindset. Now, a lot of people don't know this. However, professional esports teams are starting to have a lot more support staffs helping to make sure that the individuals who play on their teams can become champions. It's becoming much more common for chefs to focus on nutrition, physical trainers to focus on physical health, and more recently, also mental coaches to help with the professional mindset. Can you give us a little bit of history about when this started happening in esports, that teams started to take mental health seriously?
Sure. Mental health in professional sports in general is sort of a recent trend, but especially in esports, we start to see that all of the resources made available to your traditional professional athletes are also being made available now in esports. So this is just sort of the next step. If we're going to have nutrition, we're going to have physical trainers. Mental performance is another aspect of the competitive advantage. So it's an important resource to be providing.
Now, a lot of individuals at home are trying to improve their play when they're playing competitively. A lot of them only focus on their skills in the game, whether it's mechanical skills or communication or anything of that variety. With the introduction of mental skills assistance and mental coaching, is that more to make the improvement healthier or easier? Or is it something that allows individuals at home, if they focused on, as well as professional players, to actually reach a higher level of performance?
Yeah, I think when it comes to mental skills training, that's something that's for everyone and can be beneficial at any level of competition. Obviously at the professional level, the mechanical skills are elite across the board. Everyone's a great player, otherwise you don't get there. So where can you find that advantage over your opponent? Sometimes, in intense moments of competition, it's often those that stay focused and stay composed in these big moments that are able to come out on top. And if you're maybe early on in your esports career, there's almost an insurmountable mountain in front of you. There's this big task of, grinding the game out and getting better at it, and having some of these psychological skills to stay focused on the task at hand and understand, the growth mindset of that, learning can be improved, therefore your practice can be improved and you can become a better player, then that will, encourage and continue your progression.
So you really do view mental skills like focus and performance-based mindsets to be a separate skill entirely, not something that just benefits the improvement of skills in other categories.
It's certainly it's its own skill, and we often call it mental skills training because it needs to be trained or needs to be conditioned. And that's an important aspect, that if you're not practicing these skills, then just like your mechanical skills in game, they're going to diminish. They're not going to be as good as they could be.
At least with my own personal experience with coaching, there's a lot of players who are extremely hesitant to focus on factors about their health or about their soft skills that take place outside of the actual game client that they use to compete. Have you experienced this at all when working with professional teams, either in esports or traditional sports, where athletes don't think that they need to care or focus on mental skills in order to perform? And if people are resistant to, your field of expertise, how do you convince them that focusing on what you're trying to help them with actually has merit?
That's a really good question. I have encountered some resistance at times.
Yes.
And I understand that the idea of a mental skills coach or mental skills training can be intimidating. But the positive thing is we're seeing more and more each day this destigmatization of mental health. We're seeing professional athletes step out every day and admit that they have things about themselves that they want to work on and they want to improve on. And often in this psychological space, and we're seeing, leagues like the NBA, the NFL, they're requiring full-time licensed mental health practitioners. So there's a lot more resources being provided. And when it comes to thinking about, should I be using a mental skills trainer or a mental skills coach, the way I view it and try to explain it to people is that you have strengths, you have abilities, there are things that you're good at, and you just want to improve on those. Working with someone like myself isn't admitting that you're weak or that you're not mentally healthy, or there's something holding you back necessarily. It's more so saying that I'm interested in being the best version of myself and working on every aspect of myself that can take me towards that.
So let's go into that in a little bit more detail. You mentioned that mental health, skills, and performance was being destigmatized, and people are starting to realize that this is, something that really matters in terms of individual performance and health. Can we go and just address some of the most common stigmas surrounding mental health, mental skills, and mental performance that you've encountered?
Yeah, I think the biggest stigma is just this idea of a weakness that's perceived, or that maybe the person, isn't mentally strong. They're not mentally healthy by working with someone like this. And that's where I try to present the work always in this space of we're just working on improving the best parts of yourself. And it's always just about the process of progress, instead of focusing on that there's a sickness or a problem or something that needs to be necessarily fixed. You shouldn't feel like that's what this is about, that it's not just about fixing people.
Now, as a professional esports organization, Envy Gaming obviously provides quite a few resources to players, including nutrition, physical training, and mental skills coaching. However, not everybody has these resources. Individuals at home, may not have money to go to a therapist or hire a coach of some variety, even just on a freelance basis. What are some ways that individuals who are just playing competitively at home, attempting to become a professional in the esports industry, can do just on their own without having to consult a professional like yourself?
There's a lot more resources out there than there used to be, right? And especially with things like social media, content is so much more accessible now. So there's quite a few professionals in the field of sports psychology who present information online, whether it's through Twitter, Instagram, or even YouTube. So there's resources out there in that form. There's books that you can always research at your, I don't think anybody goes to a library, but you can get it off Amazon or something to that nature. It does begin, with yourself and you taking the steps and realizing that this is something you want to work on. And if you're at home and you don't have these resources readily available, I think one of the first steps is kind of making a conscious choice to live in the present moment, and take your games and your maps or your matches, one at a time. And the mistake that we often see is, living in a previous match or game and letting that beat you more than once and missing an opportunity to work on what's happening right now, or just to play your best right now, have your best round right now. And I would often suggest that that's a great place to start if you're just sitting at home wondering, where do I even begin with this? It's make the conscious choice to be where your feet are, and play in the present moment.
I like that. So you're talking a lot about focusing on the present moment and being mindful about that. However, especially in games like Overwatch, where the ranked ladder or the online matchmaker system is, you are an individual, and even though you're competing against a team of opponents, you're still having to work with 5 other individuals who may or may not be cooperative, let alone communicative with you. How do you not just focus on the present moment, but focus on yourself as well? I think one of the terms, correct me if I'm wrong, is locus of control, but when things are outside of your control, how do you still focus on yourself?
That's an extremely difficult task, especially in the team environment. One thing that is unique to esports is there's not a very traditional path to the professional level, where if you were to consider a professional soccer player, they've likely been playing their sport on a team with teammates since they were 5 or 6 years old, for a significant portion of their life. So they're very used to and learned in the ways of being part of a team and how to interact with their teammates. And in esports, we don't exactly see that yet. There are clubs popping up at universities and colleges and high schools, but it's not available everywhere to everyone. And so oftentimes you go from playing on your own without 5 or 6 teammates around you to playing in the exact same room with them, and you're being forced to work with them because you have no choice. Those are your teammates. And it's an extremely difficult task. And to recognize, yes, that what others are doing and what your teammates are doing or what the other team are doing is out of your control is extremely important, and that ties in very well to mindfulness and being in the present moment, where if you're struggling with staying in that present moment, you'll see it.
So obviously we've talked a lot about the mental performance side of things. So when you're on a stage or competing at a large event, making sure that you can maintain focus, as well as talked about ways that you can increase the rate of improvement, I suppose, during actual practice hours. But our days involve a lot more than just practicing and performing, whether people who are trying to go professional are at school or at work or just preparing their lives in the way that they eat meals and things like that. What are some of the things that you would recommend people focus on, or skills that people could practice while they're going about their day-to-day lives, or changes that they could make to their lives outside of esports or competitive gaming as a whole?
Outside of esports, I think it's really important to have an understanding of who you are as a person, and that might seem a little vague or a bit of a grand idea, but what we see is sometimes in esports, but really any form of sports or competition or even work, we get really wrapped up our identities into the one thing that we do. And it's important to be able to explore other aspects of yourself besides who you are as the professional gamer in this one space, in this one game. And without, exploring these other aspects of yourself, you might miss an opportunity to learn some life skills that then help you cope with all of the different transitions and experiences that are happening. In esports, we have people moving from all over the world to the West, and they're trying to learn English, they're trying to play on this professional team at the highest level for a paycheck, where their performance, directly affects whether or not that paycheck keeps coming. So there's a lot of stress around that, and there's a lot of transitions with a change in environment, a change in cultures and languages. So building up your life skills and building in some routines to help deal with these transitions can be pretty vital in helping you cope.
Being that you are an expert, and I'm asking the questions, but I don't have the full depth of knowledge that you do, what's the one question that you wish that professional players or professional player hopefuls asked you about mental skills?
I guess if I were to pick out one thing, I would just hope that people were more often asking, what can I do to be better? Because I believe that's just such an important part of this process, is being, having a growth mindset, and always just being interested in learning, interested in getting better, willing to face obstacles and challenges, and understanding that those setbacks are lessons that we improve upon. So if you're willing to always ask, what can I do to get better? Then I think you're always on the right path. You're always taking steps toward this, always taking steps in the direction of your best self, which is where we want people to be moving.
Exactly. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're interested in more like them, check out the Predator Training Room channel, where you're going to find more videos with myself and individuals like Mac. Again, if you liked this episode, my guest has been Mac. He's the Director of Mental Skills here at Envy Gaming, and his information is right here, so you can follow him on Twitter. Mac, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.